every bit, every word of the rebuttal is so important that our judges, adjudicators may appreciate the speech.
Hello, good morning, good morning. Okay, so to our moderator, board of adjudicators, fellow debaters, our worthy opponents, and to the audience, good morning. First, I will discuss to you the loopholes and fallacies that we have observed from the opposing team. First, China does not honor the triumph of the Philippines in arbitration at UNCLOS of our certain islands. What more if we implement joint exploration in partnership with China? Clearly, it's against international law to not abide to a judgment wherein you are a signatory to such convention. Second, the affirmative side cited economic crisis as basis of joint exploration. But it is a false claim because we are not in economic crisis because we have the investments grade credit rating. Therefore, joint exploration for the sake of reviving economy is not necessary. Third, they said that this would not violate the constitutional mandate, but we claim that the joint exploration is unconstitutional as it breaches the right of the Filipinos to have full control over the natural resources. Fourth, the affirmative side cited that we should resort to joint exploration to solve energy problem, but we assert that we should rather resort to renewable natural resources as the oil in the West Philippine Sea is not sufficient and therefore cannot be strategic solution. Fifth, the second speaker of the affirmative side stated Philippines and China that neighbors can peacefully resolve their differences. However, the arguer claims this statement, but there's no evidence for that assumption. Therefore, it is a slippery slope fallacy. Sixth, the affirmative side's argument only revolves on the Philippines' economic growth. Therefore, it is considered as a fallacy called circular argument, which means that their points are redundant. And lastly, the second speaker of the affirmative side rejected the evidence that was stated by other team. Therefore, it is fallacy called appeal to ignorance because they are not considering the proofs of their opponents. Now, I am going to present the summarized arguments that were stated by my team earlier. Our non-necessity speaker tackled about the insignificance of the proposition due to the gradually diverting of our country towards green energy and sustainable resources. And also, he emphasized that there's no need to alter the status quo because our natural reserves are limited for our country's use. Therefore, it is not necessary. On the other hand, our non-beneficiality speaker stated the non-beneficial and disadvantages of proposition using 3 points. First, resources are reserved. Joint exploration will unsettle reserved resources. Second, a 60-40 ratio split between the Philippines and China is highly unfavorable. Lastly, we are a developing country, which means there should be no one to interfere with our territory. He concluded that a shared territory, which is one of the main roots of our economy, will restrict lesser resources for us to benefit from the limited uses. Lastly, our practicability speaker points mainly focused on stating that the proposition is unconstitutional based on the contrived memorandum of understanding. The proposal for the joint exploration of the West Philippine Sea infringes our constitution. Once again, our team's essential point is that the joint exploration of the West Philippine Sea should not be considered due to the statements that we have stated above. All the points were addressed and successfully proven our point. With all the statements, facts, data, proof, and pieces of evidences, I am certain that we from the negative team successfully challenged the definition that was defined by the affirmative side and contradicted the proposition. citing its non-necessity, non-beneficiality, and non-practicability. Therefore, on behalf of the negative team, standing firm with the status quo, contradicting the proposition and declaring with full confidence to conclude that we,
Time
the
is
negative
up.
side, successfully achieved victory over this debate. Thank you.
So that was the rebuttal from the negative. Now let's hear the rebuttal from the affirmative side.
Sound check, sound check, sound check. What is the use of abundant natural resources if we will not extract and enjoy the product given by nature? When particular future you want to make use of it, today is the future of the late people. To our adjudicators, moderator, teachers, fellow debaters, good morning. Let it be resolved that a joint exploration of the West Philippine Sea should be implemented between the Philippines and China. But before I go any further, let me rebut the following statements of the negative side. The first speaker claims that Malampaya is supplying 40% of Luzon's energy consumption. Well, in fact, according to our reliable source, the Department of Energy, Malampaya supplies 45% of archipelago's biggest island. They failed to give us a correct pieces of evidence. The second speaker commits a fallacy of hasty generalization. Truth to one is not truth to many. He also commits a fallacy of missing the point, because the premises of an argument do support a particular conclusion, but it is not the conclusion that second speaker actually draws. Lastly, the third speaker said about Article 12, Section 2, they did not state the whole policy of the Constitution, which states that the state has the full control and supervision in the utilization of the natural resources in the West Philippine Sea. For the summarization of our arguments, setting parameters only on oil and natural gas exploration in the West Philippine Sea between Philippines and China, our first affirmative speaker points out that there is a necessity for us to allow it. Because first, it will be a main source of liquefied natural gas. Malampaya field as of September 30, 2020 would be completely exhausted by the first quarter of 2027, as stated by Senator Sherwinty Gatchalian, citing estimates from the Department of Energy. Therefore, the joint exploration will be the long-term plan for our country to supply gas, as West Philippine Sea lie an estimated 11 billion barrels of oil and 190 trillion feet of natural gas. The second speaker points out that joint exploration should not be seen as cessation of sovereignty. Rather, it is an assertion of it, stated in the Section 2, Paragraph 4 of Article 12 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution. Third, our country lacks the capacity to extract these resources. Based on the Department of Energy, extracting these resources requires expensive technology and machineries that our country cannot provide and afford, and China can be a way to solve the concern of ours. Moving on to the benefits of it, our second speaker presents us the following arguments. First, the joint exploration between China and Philippines will contribute to Philippine economic growth, according to an article written by Sam Pickard and Andrew Scott. The West Philippine Sea is vastly rich in oil and natural gas. According to the Philippine News Agency, the oil deposits have been for centuries, yet they have remained untouched. Oil deposits could have been tapped for the economic development of the country. Second, aside from economic growth, it will also benefit the Filipino masses. And last, the joint exploration on the West Philippine Sea can improve diplomatic relations between China and Philippines, based on Lucio Blanco Pito III. For our first argument, in the practicability, the Philippines has limited means to explore the West Philippine Sea. A joint exploration will be a feasible option to achieve both cost reduction and production and benefit enhancement, boost investors' confidence, raise energy comprehensive utilization, and enhance energy supply efficiency. The advantages of joint exploration and development outweigh its disadvantages. It is according to the study by Liu Zhang et al. Last, a joint exploration in the West Philippine Sea will reduce tension between the Philippines and China. The two countries could prove that neighbors can peacefully resolve their differences, and through the decision-made short-term opposition, it stands to improve regional stability in the long run. My analysis of this debate is that joint exploration of the West Philippine Sea with other claimant nations are legal, and it should be remembered that this is not the first time countries with rival territorial claims collaborated on the development of disputed territories. The country's rules allow for collaborative exploration of the exclusive economic zone with international firms. It is incorrect to claim that it is not permitted under our Constitution and that you are surrendering the country's sovereignty, since as stated in the Constitution, Article 12, Section 10, in terms of the division of proceeds, 60% it is in our advantage. Natural resources will completely be worthless if they go unexplored. It must be utilized, and the solution is joint exploration, and with China that is adjacent to our country is the ideal one, as stated of our speakers in their speeches. Set aside disagreements, but don't eliminate outside interference, and focus on cooperating, making realistic
Time is
efforts, and seeking progress. That's all. Yes, the day is victorious. We rest our case.
Thank you very much. Rebuttalist from the affirmative side.